James chapter 4, verse 8. And I will be reading from Holman Christian Study Bible for this verse. Draw near to God, and He will draw nearer to you. Cleanse your hands, sinners, and purify your hearts, double-minded people. I wanted to have our special music played because the title, of course, of the sermon is A Closer Walk with Thee. How much do we need that? A closer walk with Thee.
Sorry, everything.
And as every day goes by, we notice we need it more and more. So Candace and I, we met in college, and both of us actually had an immediate attraction towards each other. However, neither her nor I said anything about it. There was actually several reasons for this. But the biggest one is that Candace was in a relationship. So, never knowing that our feelings towards each other, we just stayed close friends. After about 5 years, a few rough relationships. And I'm surprised she didn't laugh on that one.
Oh, I am.
Candace and I began to talk about our college days. And in that, our attraction towards each other came up. With many more long conversations and nothing blocking our way, we decided to finally go on a date. See if it would work out. Now, here we are married, and we continue to work together on everything. Pretty much everything to keep a relationship going with a couple requires that continuous working together. And it has to get stronger. The same as with our relationship with God. And if anything, it requires a lot more work with God sometimes to make that relationship stronger. And today, my message is actually that building of a relationship with God, a closer friendship, a closer walk with Him. Before I get into it, I do want to state, this is not how you are saved. Salvation is only through Jesus Christ. But these are the tools that you need to have that closer walk. And hopefully that salvation is much more sure to you. The problem that affects most relationships today is not communicating. And once again, the same goes with our relationship with God. How can we expect for our relationship with Him to grow if we don't talk with Him? So the top point out of anything is that we must be praying. God wants to hear from us. So how often should we be praying? How often we should be praying is not actually numbered in the Scriptures. However, we see King David in Psalms 55:17 saying, "Evening and morning, and at noon I will pray and cry aloud, and He shall hear my voice. Daniel 5:10 tells us that Daniel learned that the documents had been signed which barred anybody from worshiping anybody but the king. And what did he do? He went to his house. He opened the windows in his upper room that faced towards Jerusalem. And 3 times a day, he got down on his knees, prayed, and gave thanks to God, just as he'd done before. I would say that it is wise to pray on bended knee at least 3 times a day, if possible. Yet prayer should not end there. 1 Thessalonians 5:16 through 18 says, "Rejoice always, pray constantly, give thanks in everything, for this is God's will for you in Jesus Christ." We should always be talking with God, even if that's something in your mind, or you say thank you out loud to the Lord. It could be that simple of a prayer. Just thank you. Brothers and sisters, how blessed we are to be able to approach the throne of grace with boldness so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us at proper times. And these words are actually echoed in Hebrews 4:16, telling us to let us constantly speak to our Lord. Now that we know when we should pray, let's talk how to pray. Sometimes the most difficult thing to do is tell someone how you feel or exactly what words to say. Prayer can be even more difficult because we are talking to the King of the universe. Thankfully, God knows what we need to say to him. He loves us. He knows us. And he knows what we're trying to say, even though we usually mess it up big time. But we're not alone in this. Because the very people that knew Jesus, that walked with him, talked with him, went to him and asked him, teach us how to pray. And should you need to find that prayer, you can look at Matthew 6:5 through 13, or Luke 11:1 through 4. And I actually want us to turn to Matthew chapter 6. We're going to read this together. And starting with verse 9, and we will be reading all the way to verse 13. After this manner, therefore, pray ye, Our Father, which art in heaven,
Hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
Now, this was not something that Jesus was doing to have them to repeat over and over those exact words, which you can do if you're in a pinch, but there's more to it. That prayer is a framework of the things that we need to talk about when we're praying to God. Let's break it down. The first and most important thing in this prayer is that we are praising and thanking God, the one that is holy, hallowed. Next, we are to pray that God's kingdom is to come, and that His will and works be done today and each day that we pray. We are actually to request our needs and the needs of others be met, whether it be healing, food, wisdom, protection, whatever it may be. We are to request them of and believe that it is to happen. Then we are to seek for forgiveness and ask for help to forgive others, which we actually talked about a little bit this morning in the Sabbath school. And then we are to ask His help and protection and temptation from the evil tempter. If these things are not in our prayers, we need to add them. Jesus was giving us an example to lead by. So with this framework, we can know what we need to ask and talk about for His glory, not ours. And to shine, to be able to shine in our own lives. Of course, prayer is the top of the list. But we actually need to move to a second thing that is actually misunderstood in not only our church, but most churches in the world today. When I start saying this, give me time to get through it. Because we're going to talk about meditation. Our minds naturally move to Eastern monks, trying to empty their minds, doing relaxation techniques, having some mystical experience. But that's nowhere close to what I'm talking about here. When we are praying for understanding and carefully reading the Bible, a natural step is to think about what we have read and what we have said and how it relates to our situations in life. That's why biblical meditation, that's what biblical meditation is all about. It's direct thinking, reflection. It's going to be one of those days for me. Contemplation or concentration. And it helps make prayer and Bible study meaningful instead of mechanical. Inspiring rather than superficial. This type of meditation is actually very important, and it's also found in Scripture. Psalms 119, 97 through 104 says, "Oh, how I love thy law. It is my meditation all the day. Though through thy commandments hast made me wiser than my enemies, for thy law is ever with me. I have more understanding than all of my teachers, for their testimonies are my meditation. I understand more than the ancients, because I keep thy precepts. I have refrained my feet from every evil way, that I might keep your word. I have not departed from thy judgments, for thou hast taught me. How sweet are thy words unto my taste, yet sweeter than honey to my mouth. Through thy precepts I get understanding. Therefore I hate every false way." Proverbs 4:26 says, "Carefully consider," or as the King James Version says, "ponder, the path for your feet, and all your ways will be established. So if we are doing this thoughtful meditation, it will help us for knowing where we are going. Why? Because this is listening to the direction of God. If you have other questions or concerns, also you can find this in Scripture in Joshua 1:8, 2 Corinthians 10:3-5, Philippians 4:8, and Colossians 3:1-2. So meditation that is scripturally discerned will grow a deeper understanding in God's Word. I do apologize. This is one of those harder ones for me because it's one that I have problems with. Too often we focus on our own strength, not the strength of God. When we have a problem, we don't turn to God, and we end up facing it alone. And most of the times, we fail at what we're trying to succeed in. The issue typically overcomes us. Yet when we are weak, and we turn to the source of all power, amazing things happen.
Amen.
Sometimes that turn to the source needs to be done with fasting, however. And as I said, sadly, this is a problem for me at times. However, it's also one I can't deny is highly important. Typically, fasting is considered to be the removal of food and water from your life for a period of time. And during this time, you are to humble yourself. Devote your time to prayer and study. While you may enter it with a main objection, we're all casting our cares and worries on Him and looking for strength spiritually. Many times in Scripture, we see fasting during a time of confession to God over one or the nation's sins. Daniel 9:3-5 says, "So I turned my attention to the Lord God to seek Him by prayer and petitions with fasting, sackcloth, and ashes. I prayed to the Lord my God and confessed, 'Ah, Lord, the great and all-inspiring God who keeps His gracious covenant with those who love Him and keep His commandments. We have sinned, done wrong, acted wickedly, rebelled, and turned against you, turned away from your commandments and ordinances. Daniel says this in deep and sorrowful regret. But it's not the only form that fasting comes in. But it's very important that we do it when we're in this position. Other times that fasting is used in the Scriptures is David, Esther, Ezra, just to name a few. They all put away food and drink and cried out to God for protection, guidance, help, healing. This pales, however, when we see personal drawing in closeness to God. This is first and foremost what fasting is about. And when Jesus did it in the wilderness for 40 days, he had to become physically weak, become spiritually strong. He had to depend on a close relationship with God, to not be fooled by Satan's attacks. And while, once again, food and drink typically is the point of fasting, it's not the only thing. Today, we have an interesting world of technology. And sadly, we need to fast from it as well. Amy yelled at her mother, "I can't have my cell phone for how long?" Amy's mom, calm but firmly, spoke to her teenage daughter. "I said you can't have it for a month." "But Mom, that's impossible. I can't go that long without it." She spoke with anger, but fear started to enter her voice. No one can live that long without it, one. Amy's mom said in a voice that Amy only heard as authoritarian, "I warned you 2 times before. Don't be on the phone past 10 p.m. You was on the phone at 2 in the morning. Your father and I gave you the chance to act like an adult, and yet you couldn't. If you're going to act like a child, we will treat you like a child." Amy stomped off to her room. Over the next couple of days, Amy would reach down to her pocket to check her phone for messages, or wanting to check Facebook, forgetting that she didn't have a phone. After a week, still angry, she finally got over the habit of checking for the phone. And by month's end, she hardly even noticed it was gone. She was in the habit of now having direct conversations. On the last day, Amy's mom handed her the phone and said, "So you made it through?" Amy rolled her eyes, just barely. Amy's mom gave her a hug, kissed her on the forehead, and said, "I love you. Do you want to talk again tonight?" Amy hid her smile. "Yeah, but you're cooking tonight." Sounds like a typical teenager, doesn't it? As with Amy, our stuff is important to us. Technology is an even bigger part of our life than ever before. TVs, cell phones, computers, makes our everyday life easier and harder all at once. Even as I'm speaking to you today, at the computer, having my notes. Yet what would happen if someone took it all away from us? Most of us would have thought like Amy. This is, however, what we should be doing to ourselves, taking it away from ourselves. Not getting rid of our stuff so much, but fasting from our stuff. We know that technology can be useful. Once again, I got my notes right in front of me. It's useful. The things that we work with helps us. Yet we must get out of the habit of always being on them. We must not love our things. 1 John Chapter 2, 15 through 17 says, do not love the world or the things that belong to the world. If anyone loves the world, love for the Father is not in him. For everything that belongs to the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride in one's lifestyle, is not from the Father, but is from the world. And the world, with its lust, is passing away. But the one who does God's will remains forever. So once again, as I said, I'm not saying we need to take this, toss it into the garbage, because we do use it for actual work to make our lives easier. But we do need to fast from it so we are not addicted to it, connected to it. That we can not get past that point where we say, Father, I'm sorry, I can't part with it. So now that we have learned that we need to fast from things in our lives, we also need to fill that part of our lives up with something else. A person who has a relationship with someone and is the only one talking is in a one-sided relationship, and that's not good. This is not a real friendship. So besides prayer and talking with God, we need to hear what He has to say back to us. And this is done in two different ways. One can be a more direct answer, yet sadly in the beginning of a relationship with God, our minds and hearts typically are too clouded to hear Him clearly. So next we need to look at the second way of hearing God and how blessed we are to have His words in written form.
Amen.
Now, can you imagine hearing the Scriptures read only once a week and trying to remember them through the week? Many of the rabbis in the Old Testament were known to have memorized most, if not all, of the books of the law and the prophets. They didn't have to look at the scrolls. They could actually read it word for word from memory. And we have a problem reciting a few memory verses. Deuteronomy 17:18 and 19 says, when he is seated on his royal throne, he is to write a copy of this instruction for himself on a scroll in the presence of the Levitical priest. It is to remain with him, and he is to read from it all the days of his life, so that he may learn to fear the Lord his God, to observe all the words of this instruction, and to do these statutes. It was so important, he had to write it down and read it every day, the king. Why is it not as important for us to do that every day in our lives? It's one thing when they didn't have a choice, there were scrolls. Not every family was going to have a scroll of everything. But we have no excuse. Reading His Word is necessary for our spiritual life because it is His Word to us. It is how we have our spiritual food. Both the Old and New Testament shows us how God thinks and how we can become more like Him. Psalms 119, 105 tells us, your word is a lamp for my feet and a light into my path. With prayer to God, He will open our understanding and help us to grow and be doers of His word. Because just reading it, of course, is not enough. We must become doers as well. And after a time, once we have this in our minds and His law in our hearts, we will begin to hear Him directly, which we all want to do. Have you ever wondered why God never talks to you? Sometimes He is quiet to us. But if it's all the time, there's a problem. So we must dig into this Word. We must search it out. We must devour it like we're starving, because we are. So into my last point, in a video game that I used to play back when I was little. In the very beginning of the game, there was this old, unnamed man. And he would say, "It's dangerous to go alone. Take this." And he would give you a wooden sword to fight the great dangers of the world. A wooden sword. Same thing I thought. Well, in life, God also knows that it's a very dangerous world. It's so dangerous, He gives us a sword, a shield, and a whole full set of armor. Then He sends us into the world, and He walks right behind us. He walks beside us. Sometimes He walks in front of us. Whatever needs to be done, He's there. Yet this is not all He gave us. He also gave us a group of people that are dressed and armed the same way. Some are new troops, starting basic training. Some are good soldiers. They're still learning, but they're trained up. Then some are seasoned veterans. They know their stuff, but their experiences have taught them that they can always learn something new. This is our support group. This is where we find encouragement and learn from one another. 1 Corinthians 12, 25 and 26 tells us, so that there would be no division in the body, but that the members would have the same concern for each other. So if one member suffers, all the members suffer with it. If one member is honored, all of the members rejoice with it. Sadly, at times, we find that members of the support group can offend or hurt each other. But God's goal is for us to learn, to reconcile, and to get along. In this way, the church is a workshop for living His way of life, not ours. Biblical biblical fellowship, is a three-way relationship between us, God, and His people. As Brother Lee likes to say, Jesus and me must get along with Jesus and you. And God put each of us in His church where He wants us with His own specific part for us to play. Malachi 3, 16 and 17 tells us, at that time, those who fear the Lord spoke to one another. The Lord took notice and listened. So a book of remembrance was written before Him for those who feared Yahweh. and had high regards for his name. They will be mine, said the Lord of hosts, a special possession on the day I am preparing. I will have compassion on them as a man has compassion on his son who serves him. We must also remember that God warns us not to neglect our meetings together because we so desperately need the encouragement from each other too. We must be able to promote love and good works, as Hebrews 10:24 through 25 states. So this is how we begin to draw nearer to God, that He may draw nearer to us. We have to have prayer, lots of it. We must be able to meditate on His Word constantly. We must be able to fast at times, not all the time. We wouldn't survive very long. We must dig into His Word each day and listen to Him. And we must work together and build each other up and not tear each other down. For this to happen, some of our own time has to be given up. Some of our comfort has to be given up. This is not grace through works. This is a desire to want to connect with the loving Father. This is the seeking what we may find. You cannot find a treasure without giving up time and comfort. You have to sacrifice and we both find it. And of course, this is just the beginning of it. And because of how long this sermon took, I had to split it in two. And assuming the weather is not horrible next weekend, I will give you the rest of it then. So if we will all stand together and turn to selection 132. O come, all ye faithful,